I was sitting in the packed conference room when Marcus began his presentation. The slides looked familiar because I had created every single one of them during 3 weeks of late nights. Every word, every diagram, every solution came directly from my debugging work on the payment system. He clicked through my logic like it was his own brilliant discovery. The key breakthrough, he said with a confident smile, was identifying the database timeout issue. My breakthrough, my fix, my sleepless nights staring at code. The room erupted in applause. Our director nodded approvingly from the front row. Marcus never once looked in my direction during the entire presentation. He thanked the team briefly, but everyone in that room knew what that really meant. I felt heat crawling up my neck, my hands gripping the armrest tightly. This wasn't a mistake or an oversight. This was deliberate theft happening right in front of me, in front of everyone. When the clapping finally stopped, HR asked me to stay behind. My stomach dropped immediately. Patricia from HR closed the door gently behind us. Marcus stood beside her with his arms crossed, looking appropriately concerned. "Vanessa," Patricia began carefully, choosing her words, "we wanted to check in with you about team dynamics." My stomach dropped even further. I wasn't being defended here. I was being managed like a problem employee. "Professional jealousy can be toxic to workplace culture," she continued, her voice soft but extremely firm. "Marcus has been very generous in crediting the team, but we've noticed some tension from your end." I stared at her, completely unable to process what was actually happening. Marcus nodded sympathetically, like I was a difficult child who needed gentle correction. "We all contribute differently to projects," he added smoothly and calmly. "Maybe you're feeling overlooked, but that's not productive for anyone here." They were gaslighting me completely, rewriting reality before my eyes. I managed a tight smile and said absolutely nothing in response. What could I possibly say that wouldn't make this situation worse? As I left, Marcus caught my arm firmly. "Effective immediately, you'll handle the routine maintenance tickets," he said quietly. At my desk the next morning, Marcus made his move completely public for everyone. "Vanessa tends to overcomplicate things," he announced loudly to the entire department, laughing. "Sometimes simple solutions work best, right?" A few coworkers chuckled awkwardly at his comment. Others avoided my eyes completely. I focused on my screen, face burning with complete humiliation. Later that afternoon, I tried accessing the payment system for a routine security check. Access denied. I tried the monitoring dashboard next. Denied. The backup logs. Denied again. Someone had systematically removed every single one of my permissions to the system I had built from scratch over months. I sat frozen, staring at the error messages flashing on my screen repeatedly. Marcus walked past my desk casually, coffee in hand, whistling. He knew exactly what he'd done to me. Then I noticed something in the error log I could still access by chance. A pattern forming, a critical vulnerability nobody else would recognize because they didn't understand the architecture like I did. Only I knew what I was looking at here. 2 days later, the payment system glitched during a minor transaction surge in the afternoon. Nothing catastrophic or customer-facing, but I recognized the signature immediately from my work. The exact failure point I had warned about in my original documentation submitted months ago. Marcus called an emergency meeting and dismissed it casually to the worried team. "Just a minor hiccup," he assured everyone, confidently and smoothly. "These systems have quirks. Nothing to worry about here." But I knew better than that. This wasn't a quirk or random glitch at all. This was the first crack in a foundation that would eventually crumble completely under pressure. I said nothing during the meeting at all. Instead, I opened a new folder on my personal laptop that night at home. I named it simply Documentation. I began methodically saving every email, every system log, every conversation thread I could find. Screenshots of my original bug reports with timestamps clearly visible, timestamps showing exactly when I'd submitted the fix to the team, chat messages where I'd explained the solution to Marcus directly and clearly. If this was war, I needed weapons, and I was going to collect every single one available. Over the next week, I started noticing the pattern went much deeper than I'd initially realized. I reached out quietly to former teammates who'd left the company over the past year, coffee meetings downtown, casual lunches at quiet restaurants. "Did Marcus ever take credit for your work?" I asked carefully, testing the waters cautiously. The stories came pouring out immediately from everyone. Projects presented as his vision and leadership, solutions he'd discovered after late-night conversations with team members who did the actual work. One developer, Kevin, laughed bitterly into his coffee cup. I documented everything after the second time it happened to me. Didn't matter at all. He's untouchable in this company. Another former colleague, Priya, just shook her head sadly at the memory. I tried going to HR once about it. They made me feel crazy, like I was imagining things that weren't real. I stopped complaining after those eye-opening conversations. Complaining meant becoming a target, and I'd already seen what happened to targets here. Instead, I watched carefully. I observed everything. I learned his patterns and tactics carefully. Then my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn message. The message was from a recruiter I didn't know. Your profile caught my attention recently. Would you be interested in discussing senior engineering roles? I stared at that message for a long time before responding to it. Marcus's strategy became clearer with each passing day at the office. In meetings, he'd subtly reframe my contributions to make them smaller and less important. Vanessa helped with some of the testing, he'd say casually, reducing weeks of architecture work to simple button clicking. To leadership, I was becoming difficult to work with, according to whispered conversations. I overheard fragments of conversation in the hallway near the elevators. Not really a culture fit here. Struggles with collaboration on projects. Gets too emotional about her code sometimes. The narrative was shifting carefully and deliberately, and I was powerless to stop it directly through confrontation. My performance reviews, once stellar and full of praise, now included phrases like needs to work on team communication and sometimes resistant to feedback from colleagues. Feedback I'd never actually received from anyone on the team. The recruiter called me that week during business hours. His name was Omar, and he was refreshingly direct and honest. I've been watching your commits on the open source projects you contribute to regularly. Your work is impressive and innovative, so why are you still at that company? I didn't have a good answer for him. Not yet, anyway. But I was starting to form one in my mind clearly. I changed my strategy completely overnight after that conversation. I stopped defending myself in meetings entirely. I stopped correcting the record when Marcus misrepresented things to others. I responded to Marcus with polite professionalism, nothing more or less than required. Sure, I can handle that task. No problem at all. Whatever you think is best for the project. Inside, I was building something he couldn't see or understand at all. I took Omar's call during my lunch break, sitting in my car in the parking lot. The role he described was senior level, better pay, actual recognition for work done. I'd need to see your recent work samples, he said professionally and clearly. I smiled, thinking of the documentation I'd been quietly compiling at home. I can provide a comprehensive portfolio with detailed examples of my work. I scheduled 3 more interviews that week, all during lunch breaks or after normal hours. Nobody at work noticed my absence or asked questions about where I was. I'd become invisible anyway, exactly as Marcus wanted me to be. Then Marcus appeared at my desk with a young analyst named Tyler trailing behind him nervously. Vanessa, Tyler's joining our team starting today. I need you to train him on the payment system completely. I understood immediately what was happening here with perfect clarity. Tyler reported directly to Marcus, not to me at all. He was young, eager, and had no idea he was being positioned as my replacement. I could have refused outright and made a scene. I could have made it difficult for everyone. Instead, I smiled warmly and welcomed him to the team. Happy to help, I said genuinely and kindly. Over the next 2 weeks, I trained Tyler thoroughly and patiently on everything that was officially documented in our systems. Official protocols, standard procedures, emergency contacts, troubleshooting guides for common issues. I was helpful, patient, and detailed in every explanation I gave him. What I didn't teach him were the unwritten fail-safes I'd built into the system. The monitoring scripts I'd built ran on my personal credentials exclusively for security. The backup systems I'd created existed outside official channels and documentation completely. The early warning signals only I knew how to read and interpret correctly. Tyler learned the car's controls, but I kept the engine manuals safely hidden. Meanwhile, the system was showing stress signals to anyone who knew what to look for. Small transaction delays throughout the day, occasional timeout errors appearing randomly. Nothing alarming to someone who didn't know what to look for specifically. That Friday afternoon, an email thread accidentally copied me due to someone's careless mistake. It was internal leadership discussing the payment system fix from last month enthusiastically. Marcus's innovative solution has stabilized our infrastructure completely, the director wrote enthusiastically to the team. His technical leadership continues to impress the executive team immensely. I scrolled down to the original message in the thread carefully. My name had been there in the first version clearly. Someone had forwarded an earlier version where I was credited specifically by name. But in the version sent to executives, my name had been carefully removed completely. Just the team remained in generic terms without specifics. Marcus had personally edited it before forwarding to leadership. I sat staring at both emails on my screen for a long time, then I methodically saved them both to my documentation folder. Original version with my name. Edited version without it. Forwarding chain showing the progression. Metadata showing exactly when and by whom the changes were made deliberately. My documentation folder was getting substantial and comprehensive. That weekend, I went through everything I'd collected so far meticulously. It told a clear story of systematic credit theft, one nobody had bothered to look for because Marcus was so good at controlling the narrative. Monday morning brought company-wide news via email to everyone. Marcus was being promoted to Senior Technical Director effective immediately. The announcement praised his innovative solutions to critical infrastructure challenges and his exceptional leadership in system stabilization. There was a small celebration in the break room with cake and coffee. Congratulations all around from everyone on the team. Marcus gave a humble speech about teamwork and collaboration being essential. He thanked leadership for recognizing his efforts and dedication to excellence. He mentioned the team generally, briefly, almost as an afterthought to his speech. I stood in the back and clapped politely with everyone. I was the last person to start applauding and the first to stop completely. That night, I checked my personal email at home on my laptop. The offer letter from Omar's company was waiting in my inbox finally. Senior software engineer position. 30% salary increase over my current pay. Full credit for my work in writing as part of the contract. I read it 3 times carefully to make sure. Then I read it again, just to be absolutely certain. I didn't sign immediately despite my excitement. I wanted to think about timing carefully and strategically, about maximum impact on the company, about what I owed myself after months of watching someone else wear my accomplishments like a costume. I accepted the offer the next morning before I could second-guess myself at all. 4 weeks' notice, standard professional courtesy in the industry. I drafted my resignation letter carefully, keeping it brief and completely neutral in tone. Pursuing new opportunities for growth. Grateful for the experience here. Nothing that revealed what I knew or what I'd been collecting secretly. I submitted it to HR through the portal and waited for reactions. The reaction was muted, almost relieved from what I could tell. Patricia scheduled an exit interview for my last week at the company. Marcus seemed almost relieved, honestly, probably glad to have the difficult team member gone finally. I continued coming to work every day, professional and pleasant to everyone I encountered. But I also continued documenting everything I saw happening around me. Every shortcut Tyler took, he didn't understand the deeper architecture at all. Every warning sign the system displayed that Marcus dismissed as normal fluctuation. Every emergency patch applied without understanding the underlying cause of issues. The error rate was climbing steadily upward, slowly enough that nobody noticed the pattern forming clearly. But I saw it clearly and completely. I'd built this system from the ground up myself. I knew exactly how it would fail under pressure. 3 weeks into my notice period, the system started showing serious strain under load. I sent one email to the team. Calm, professional, detailed, and thorough in explanation. I've noticed increasing timeout errors in the payment processing queue recently. The current patch addresses symptoms, but not the root cause of the problem. Without the fail-safe protocols, a cascade failure is likely under peak load conditions. Recommend immediate review of the architecture documentation I provided in March. I copied HR and the technical director on the email for visibility. Marcus replied within an hour, copying everyone I'd included in the thread. Handled. The system is stable and functioning normally. This is standard fluctuation. Thanks for the concern. 2 days later, during a moderate transaction surge, the system crashed for 6 full minutes. Not catastrophic, but visible to customers trying to make purchases. Customers noticed and complained. Leadership noticed immediately and panicked. Marcus called an emergency meeting in the main conference room urgently. I wasn't invited to attend at all. I watched the calendar invite list carefully from my desk. My name had been deliberately excluded from the attendees completely. I kept working quietly at my desk while they scrambled in the conference room. The emergency meeting ran for 3 full hours without a break. I heard fragments through the office walls clearly. Legacy code issues causing problems. Unexpected load patterns we didn't anticipate. Isolated incident that won't repeat. Marcus emerged looking stressed but controlled and confident. He'd convinced them it was manageable with minor adjustments. That afternoon, he sent a department-wide email outlining new monitoring procedures and patch schedules. None of it addressed the actual problem at all, unfortunately, because he didn't understand the actual problem fundamentally or technically. He'd never built the system from scratch like I had. He'd only presented the fix I'd created after weeks of work. By week's end, executives were asking pointed questions in meetings. I heard the word audit whispered in the hallway near the bathrooms. Someone from corporate IT was being brought in to review the infrastructure thoroughly. Marcus started working late every night, probably trying to understand the system well enough. Tyler looked overwhelmed and panicked, realizing he was in over his head completely. Nobody asked me for help or input at all. I'd been written out of the story so completely that even in crisis, I was invisible. My last week arrived quietly without fanfare. I did exactly what my job description required professionally. Nothing more, nothing less than expected or documented. When colleagues asked questions, I directed them to official documentation politely. When alerts fired, I logged them properly and moved on to other tasks. I stopped volunteering information freely to anyone, stopped offering solutions proactively to problems, stopped caring whether they understood the danger they were in completely. Marcus tried being friendly that week, which was interesting and unexpected. "No hard feelings about the transition, right?" he said, stopping by my desk casually. "These things happen in tech all the time. I'm sure you'll do great at your new place." I smiled politely at him without emotion. "I'm sure I will succeed there." He didn't catch the edge in my voice at all somehow. On Wednesday, Patricia scheduled my exit interview in a small conference room privately. I arrived with my laptop bag and a small USB drive in my pocket. "Standard formalities," she said, pulling up her form on the computer screen. "Why are you leaving the company?" I smiled neutrally at her. "Career growth opportunities elsewhere, better alignment with my professional goals." Then I handed her the USB drive across the table. "Documentation of my work here, for records and future reference." Her expression changed noticeably as she took it from my hand. My last day was Friday as scheduled. Someone had ordered cake from the bakery downtown. The department gathered for an awkward farewell in the break room. People I'd worked with for years gave generic well wishes and empty promises. "Good luck with everything. Stay in touch with us. Don't be a stranger." Marcus shook my hand firmly, his smile perfect and practiced for the audience. "No hard feelings," he said again, like repeating it made it true somehow. I looked him directly in the eyes steadily. "None at all," I replied. I meant it completely. I didn't need feelings anymore at all. I had facts and documentation. I cleaned out my desk efficiently and methodically without sentiment. Personal items, photos, the coffee mug I'd brought from home years ago. I left my company laptop, security badge, and access cards in a neat stack. What I didn't mention was that I was also disabling something else important. The personal monitoring dashboards I'd built ran on my credentials exclusively for security. The automated alerts I configured to catch early warnings of problems. The fail-safe scripts that had been quietly preventing exactly the kind of cascade failure Marcus didn't believe could happen. I logged out for the last time from all systems. The system was completely on its own now without me. I started my new job Monday morning feeling lighter than I had in months. The office was bright, modern, and respectful to everyone who worked there. My new manager, Angela, spent the first day discussing my ideas and asking for my input genuinely. "We hired you for your expertise and experience," she said sincerely to me. "We want to hear what you think about everything." It was surreal after months of being silenced and ignored. On Tuesday, I was in a strategy meeting when my personal phone started buzzing insistently. I ignored it professionally and continued listening. The buzzing continued without stopping at all. I glanced down at the screen, 14 missed calls already, 23 text messages waiting, all from my old company and people there. I turned the phone face down and continued the meeting without distraction. When I checked during lunch break, the messages told a clear story. The payment system had collapsed completely during peak morning hours of business. Total outage affecting everything. No fail-safes engaged automatically. No automated recovery happening. Transactions frozen across the entire platform for all customers. Marcus had called 6 times desperately. Tyler 3 times panicking. Even Patricia from HR had reached out urgently. The last message was from the technical director himself personally and directly. The messages were increasingly desperate in tone and urgency. "Vanessa, we need your help urgently right now. System-wide failure happening. Please call ASAP. Can you walk us through your architecture documentation immediately? Just 5 minutes of your time, please. Critical situation developing rapidly." I read them all carefully and slowly without rushing. Then I finished my lunch completely. At 2 o'clock, my new manager stopped by my desk curiously. "Everything okay? You seem distracted by something." I smiled at her reassuringly. "Just messages from my old job, nothing urgent on my end." She raised an eyebrow curiously at that. "They're having issues over there?" I shrugged casually without concern. "Apparently so. Not my problem anymore, though." She grinned approvingly at my response. "Good for you. Setting boundaries is important for mental health." That evening, Marcus called again personally and directly. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. He left a voicemail message. His voice had lost its confident edge completely now. "Vanessa, please answer. I know things ended awkwardly, but we really need your insight here desperately. The system is completely down. We've lost a full day of transactions. Just call me back, please." I deleted the voicemail without responding at all to him. Thursday morning, the technical director reached out personally through LinkedIn messaging. "Vanessa, I understand you've moved on, but we're in a critical situation here. Would you be willing to join a call to discuss the system architecture? We need someone who understands the original design." I considered ignoring it completely and moving on, but something made me respond to him. "I can join a call tomorrow at 10 a.m., 1 hour maximum." I copied Angela on my calendar and explained the situation to her. She was supportive completely. "Handle it however you see fit. You don't owe them anything, but if you want closure, take the time." Friday at 10, I logged into the video call from my new office professionally. My webcam showed my modern workspace clearly, my new company logo visible on the wall behind me. The gallery view showed 8 worried faces from my old company looking stressed. Marcus looked exhausted and defeated completely. Tyler looked terrified of the consequences. The technical director looked grim and serious. "Thank you for joining us," the director began formally. "We're experiencing a catastrophic failure in the payment system. Can you help us understand what's happening?" I leaned back in my chair, calm and professional. "I can explain what's happening," I said calmly and clearly. "But first, let me share my screen with everyone." I pulled up the documentation folder I'd been building for months carefully. This is a timeline of the payment system architecture, from initial design through implementation. I clicked through methodically and slowly. Here's my original bug report from January, identifying the database timeout vulnerability clearly. Click. Here's my proposed solution, submitted February 3rd with full details. Click. Here's the fix implementation, completed after 3 weeks of debugging work. I showed them everything systematically and thoroughly. The original emails with my name clearly visible. The edited versions with my name removed deliberately. The warnings I'd sent repeatedly. The responses dismissing them as unnecessary worry. Side-by-side comparisons of my documented work and Marcus's presentations to leadership. The silence on the call was absolute and uncomfortable. Finally, the director spoke up. "Why didn't you bring this to our attention sooner?" I smiled slightly at the question. "I did, multiple times. I was told I was being emotional and unprofessional." Marcus's face had gone pale completely. Tyler looked like he might be sick. The director's expression was unreadable and stone-like. I continued sharing documentation methodically without stopping. Chat logs showing me explaining the architecture to Marcus in detail repeatedly. Email threads where I'd warned about the exact failure that had just occurred. Performance reviews that contradicted my actual contributions to projects completely. The technical director's face had gone pale as he reviewed everything. He turned to Marcus directly. "Can you explain this?" Marcus stammered badly and unconvincingly. "This is taken out of context. The system was collaborative work. Vanessa is misrepresenting." I interrupted by pulling up the system logs clearly. These are access records showing who modified the code. Dates, times, user IDs. My credentials appear on 92% of the critical commits. I showed the presentation Marcus had given, then my original documentation with identical wording. "Here's the slide deck he presented in March. Here's my technical specification from February. You can compare the timestamps." Marcus tried again desperately to save himself. "We all build on each other's work. That's how teams function." The director cut him off sharply. "Marcus, stop talking. HR, can you stay on this call after Vanessa leaves?" I watched Marcus's face crumble completely in real time. The unraveling happened before my eyes. Marcus contradicted himself 3 times trying to explain the timeline of events. Tyler admitted he'd been trained only on surface-level procedures without depth. The technical director asked increasingly pointed questions that Marcus couldn't answer at all. "If you designed this system, why can't you explain the fail-safe protocols? Where's the architecture documentation you supposedly created? Why do all the original commits trace back to Vanessa's credentials?" I watched without emotion or satisfaction at all. This wasn't about satisfaction or revenge. It was just truth finally having space to exist. After 40 minutes, the director spoke directly to me. "Vanessa, I need to apologize sincerely. We failed you significantly. Is there any chance you'd consider consulting to help us resolve this crisis?" I checked my watch for the time. "My hour is up. I have a meeting with my current team." Patricia from HR spoke up desperately. "Please, just a few more minutes." I looked at her directly without sympathy. "You told me I was being professionally jealous. You enabled this situation. I don't owe you my time." I ended the call. Over the next week, information trickled back through former colleagues who'd stayed in touch. Marcus had been removed from the project immediately after the call. An internal investigation was launched into his conduct. Several people were interviewed about the culture of credit theft. Tyler had apparently broken down completely, admitting he had no idea how to fix the system. The company had to bring in external consultants at enormous expense. One of my old teammates, Priya, texted me with updates. "They're completely lost without you. System's still unstable. Marcus got demoted. Some people are saying he might be let go entirely." I read the message without much feeling about it. Then I received an email from Marcus himself personally. "Personal account, not company email address. Subject line, I'm sorry." I almost deleted it without reading it all. But curiosity won out. The message was long and rambling without structure. He admitted he'd taken credit he didn't deserve from me, said he never meant for it to go this far, claimed he'd been under pressure to perform and made bad choices. The email ended with a request. "I know I don't deserve to ask, but is there any chance you'd be willing to consult on fixing the system? I'll make sure you're properly compensated and credited. I need to make this right." I read it twice. Then I checked my consulting rate guidelines. As a senior engineer with specialized knowledge of a critical failing system, my market rate would be significant. I drafted a response, professional and brief. "I appreciate your apology. However, I've moved on to a role where I'm valued appropriately. I'm not available for consulting. I recommend you hire someone more qualified to rebuild the system correctly. Best of luck." I didn't mention that more qualified was a deliberate echo of his own words to me. I didn't need to. I sent the email and closed that chapter. That afternoon, Angela stopped by my desk. "How'd the call with your old company go last week?" I smiled. "It went exactly as it needed to. They asked if you'd help fix their mess? She guessed correctly. I nodded. And you said no. I said no. Angela grinned approvingly. Good. You're too valuable here to waste time cleaning up someone else's incompetence. Speaking of which, the team loves the system improvements you proposed. When can you present to leadership? This was what work was supposed to feel like. Ideas welcomed, credit given, respect earned and maintained. I spent the rest of that month focusing on my new role, building systems that had my name on them from the start. Leading projects where my expertise was requested, not stolen. Making decisions that people actually implemented because they trusted my judgment. Months passed. Through the industry grapevine, I heard the aftermath. Marcus had been let go during the investigation, not just demoted, fired. The company rebuilt the payment system from scratch based on my original documentation. It took them 9 months and cost triple what my salary had been. They never asked me for help again. A year after walking out, I was leading a team of 12 engineers at my new company. We'd launched 3 successful products using architecture I'd designed openly with full credit. My name was on patents. My insights were quoted in company meetings. I'd become exactly what I'd always been, except now people could see it. I never publicly exposed Marcus. I never wrote a blog post or went on social media. I didn't need to destroy him. I just needed to leave. The system collapsed without me because I'd been holding it together all along. The truth came out because I documented it carefully, professionally, thoroughly. Some people learned, some people didn't. The lesson I carried forward wasn't about revenge. It was about value, about knowing what you're worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it.